Hello, students. Good evening. I welcome every one of you to your live session of revision of Chapter 2, Unit 1, which is Law of Demand and Elasticity of Demand. Right? I hope everybody is doing great. Everybody is doing fantastic. So, this is a live session where I'll be dealing with the revision part of Chapter 2, Unit 1 first, and then we can discuss the test paper that you've written. So, we'll do the revision first. You can ask the doubts if you have any doubts in the particular unit, and then we'll also discuss the test paper that you've written in the test which happened 2 days back, right? All right. So what did we do in chapter 2 unit 1? We first started with seeing as to what is demand, right? What's demand? Demand is nothing but a desire for a good backed with what? Backed with ability and willingness. So there should be desire, there should be ability, and there should be willingness. If any of them is missing, then you cannot call that particular thing as demand. So if a beggar is desiring for an iPhone where he does not have the ability to pay for it, it will not be amounting to demand, right? So you should have the desire, you should have the ability, to pay for that good, and also you should have the willingness to pay for that good. So you have the ability, you have the income that you're generating, you should have the willingness to part out this income for this particular expenditure, right? All right. So come here. Demand is what? It is the desire for a product. It involves means to purchase that product or ability to purchase that product, and then willingness to allocate such means for purchasing that product. We saw the definition, where definition is dealing with what it refers to: quantity of goods or services which the consumer is willing and able to purchase. So willingness and ability at various prices during the given period of time. So at various prices during the given period of time, this is also important, because without a definite price or without the time period, again, demand statement is incomplete. You cannot call it as demand, right? So if I say that 1,000 oranges are being demanded, this is not the right statement, because I should say 1,000 oranges are demanded at what price and during what period. So if I say 1,000 oranges are being demanded at rupees 10 during the first week of November, now it's a proper demand statement where I've included the units, the quantity, I've included the price, I've included the time period also, right? So it's a flow concept. Wherever, whatever concept deals with time period, it will be a flow concept, right? Then we saw determinants of demand, or factors which affect demand. Now, what were these? First one of that was price of the product, right? What is the price of the product? That determines the demand. Higher the price, lower will be the demand, right? You do not demand something at a very high price, but if the prices are falling, if the price is less, then you would demand more, right? So it's an inverse relationship between price of the product and its demand, right? The second one is price of related good. Now, this related commodity can either be a complementary good or a substitute good. What's a complementary? Complementary is something which are consumed together to satisfy one particular want, right? What is a substitute? Substitutes are fighting with each other in order to satisfy the same want, right? So they satisfy the same want and can be used in place of one another. So they'll be fighting with each other to satisfy the same want. What is the example of complementary? Your petroleum car or your pen and ink, these are complementary goods. What are substitutes? Your coffee and tea, right? Your car and bike, right? Your ball pen and ink pen, all these are substitutes. So what happens when the price of these commodity changes? When there's a fall in price of a complementary good, when there's a fall in price of a complementary good, then what will happen? The demand of my commodity will rise. Why? Because if there's a fall in price of complementary good, that means this complementary good will be demanded more than, so automatically my quantity demanded will also increase. Let's take an example. Let's say there's a fall in price of cars. All right, what will happen to the demand of petrol? If there's fall in price of cars, then more will be demanded of cars. If more demand is demanded of cars, automatically petrol's quantity demanded will also increase. So there's an inverse relationship between the price of your complementary good and the quantity demanded of your good, correct? Now let's see in substitute what is happening. In substitutes, if the price of the substitute commodity is falling, my quantity demanded will also fall. Why? Because my consumers will go and demand the substitute good, since the price of substitute good is falling. right? So I lose some customers to the substitute. So obviously, if the price of the substitute is falling, then my quantity demanded will also fall. So there's a direct relationship in case of substitute goods, right? Then we saw income of the consumer also affects demand. If income is greater, generally the quantity demanded will also be greater. But this relationship can be analyzed with the different nature of goods, which are four kinds of natures. Let's see what is the first one. The first type of good is normal goods. In case of normal goods, what will happen? A rise in income would also give a rise to quantity demanded of this good, right? Examples can be your normal goods like your branded clothing, like your furniture, your cars, your microwaves, your fridge, right? These are all normal goods. The second one can be essential consumer goods. These are what? These are basic necessities of life. These has to be consumed in order for you to live, right? An increase in income will also increase the quantity demanded of such goods, but this increase in quantity demanded will be less than proportionate than increase in income, right? So your essential consumer goods, why is it reacting that way? Because it occupies very less proportion of your income, right? So the percentage increase which is happening, the percentage increase in income, that percentage increase in income will be more than the percentage change in quantity demanded, or your percentage change in quantity demanded will be lesser than the percentage change in income in case of essential consumer goods, right? Then inferior good, what happens in this case? As the income is rising, you will prefer a superior good, and that is why you'll consume less of inferior good, right? Like bajra and wheat. So as the income is increasing, quantity demanded of inferior good decreases, right? Then luxury goods. Luxury goods demand only starts after a certain level of income. It does not start before that, right? So after a certain level of income only the demand rises. After that, as the income is increasing, quantity demanded will also increase, right? Now let's move on to the next class, class 9. All right. So what did we do in the next class? We continued our factors affecting demand or determinants of demand. So we did in the previous class, price of the good, price of related commodity, income of the consumer. The fourth factor is tastes and preferences, right? Your tastes and preference also affect the quantity demanded. If the goods which are in fashion right now, that will have a higher demand. But goods which are out of fashion or they're obsolete, they'll have a lower demand because tastes and preferences of the consumers have changed. This tastes and preferences can be divided into three effects. First one is demonstration or bandwagon effect. What happens in this? In this, you start demanding a product only by seeing that somebody else also has it, right? Dekha dekhi karna, that somebody else has it, I also need it. This can have two reasons. One is you like what you see. That means you are liking the features of that opposite product, and that is why you're buying it. Second is you're thinking, oh, if that person can afford it, I can also buy it, right? If that person can afford it, I can also buy it. These can be the two reasons for bandwagon effect or demonstration effect, where you are buying things by seeing others. Second is what? Snob effect. This is opposite of bandwagon. What is happening here? Here you're thinking, oh, this good is with everybody, then why should I also purchase it? So that is why you're not purchasing this good, thinking that, oh, this is very common, I don't want to purchase it, it is with everybody, right? Then what is Veblen effect? Veblen effect happens with Veblen goods or prestige goods. Now what are these? These are high priced goods which has prestige value. Who purchases them? These are purchased by status seeking rich people, right? So status seeking rich people, when do they purchase goods? They purchase goods more when the prices are high. Why? Because in their eyes, in the eyes of those kind of consumers, they relate the prestige value of that good to the price of that good. So if the price is high, then they think, oh, this is giving me more prestige. Why? Because then they can show off, oh, I have bought this diamond and this diamond is worth 1 crore, right? So they can show off that particular good that they've purchased, and they relate that prestige value that is coming out of that good to the price. So higher the price, higher will be the prestige value, and they will demand more at a higher price, right? So this is Veblen effect or Veblen goods. Then consumers expectations also affect demand. If the consumers is expecting that the future prices may rise, then what will they do? They'll start purchasing more now, they'll start demanding more now. Similarly, if they're expecting that the supply would be short in future, they'll start purchasing or demanding more now because they think that the supply will be shortage in the future, right? So consumers' expectations also affect demand. Then there are other factors like size of population. Greater the size, greater will be the demand. Composition of population, right? How is your population composed? The demographics of your population. How many old people, how many children, how many adults? So that will also depend as to what kind of goods are being demanded, right? So you can read there what examples are being given. Then level of national income and its distribution. Higher the national income, higher will be the demand of goods. Also, distribution matters as to how is it distributed. Is it distributed only among poor people or between rich, poor, everybody to, evenly? Is it even distribution of income or uneven distribution of income? If it is unevenly distributed, then only those rich people would be demanding more. Rich people will demand what kind of goods? Comforts and luxuries, right? If it is unevenly distributed, that means rich people will be owning much of the income. That means more of comforts and luxuries will be demanded. So distribution of income will also determine the demand. Then consumer credit facility and interest rate, as to how easy is it to get loans, at what interest rate am I getting loans, right? If I'm getting a credit card very easily, then I can demand more than what I could have without that credit card. Similarly, if the interest rates are low, I can take up loans and I can demand goods, right? Demand function was easy, that I'm leaving. What is law of demand? It's nothing but showing the relationship between the price of the good and quantity demanded. Your first determinant of demand or your first factor of demand that we just saw. So what does this say? It says ceteris paribus. That means everything else remaining the same. If the price of the good is falling, then the quantity demanded of that good will rise. Correct? If the price is falling, the quantity demanded will rise. Then we saw demand schedule where the falling prices was resulting in increasing demand. Demand curve is what kind of curve? It's a downward sloping curve. That means it is sloping downwards towards the right and it has a negative slope. So if it is like this, it has negative slope, but if it is increasing, it has positive slope, right? Then market demand schedule. So individual demand schedule we saw, then market demand schedule. What is market demand schedule? It's the addition of all the individual demands, right? PQR is demanding. If you add all of them, you get total market demand or market demand schedule. Then we saw reasons for downward sloping demand curve, or reasons for what is the reason for inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. That means if the price is increasing, why is quantity demanded falling? Or if the price is falling, why is quantity demanded increasing, right? What is the reason? The first reason that we saw is law of diminishing marginal utility, or law of DMU. What does law of DMU say? As the price is reducing, the quantity what is law of DMU saying? As in when you are consuming more and more of units, the utility that is being derived from those additional units is decreasing, or marginal utility is decreasing. So if I consume a unit and have, let's say, 50 utils of utility, and second unit is just giving me 30 utils of utility, so will I pay more or less for the second unit? If I paid 100 for the first unit, will I pay 100 for the second unit also? Obviously no. Second unit is giving me lesser utility, so why will I pay the same amount? I will purchase a second unit only if the price is being reduced. You're understanding? At 100 rupees, I paid 100, got utility of 50, right? 100 ko 50 utility mili. Now, if I pay 100 again and get 30 utility only, will I be satisfied? No, I'm paying the same amount, but the utility has reduced. So what should happen to price? In order to consume more, in order to let the consumer purchase more, the producer will have to reduce the price, right? Because the utility that the consumer is deriving is continuously diminishing, so the producer will have to reduce the price in order to sell more. Correct? Understood? The second reason is price effect, right? The price effect again has two sub effects. What are those effects? Substitution effect and income effect. Now what is substitution effect? Substitution effect is that when the price of the good is falling, what will happen? There'll be consumers who were consuming a substitute product, they'll also come and consume my product. right? So what is happening because of this? The quantity demanded is rising, right? So if my price of the product is falling, there'll be some consumers who are consuming the substitute product. They'll come and consume my product now. So my quantity demanded is increasing. Falling price, quantity demand is increasing. So this is also a reason for your downward sloping demand curve. Second is income effect. Now what is income effect? Income effect means as the prices are increasing, sorry, let's say prices are decreasing. If the price is decreasing, then your buying capacity or purchasing power increases, right? As you can see in the table, that as the price is decreasing, your purchasing power or your buying capacity will increase. What is purchasing power? The number of units that you can purchase. So if the purchasing power is increasing, obviously what will happen? You will purchase more and more. So as the price is falling, since your income capacity, sorry, your buying capacity or purchasing power is increasing, you will try to purchase more and more. So this is also what one of the reason for downward sloping demand curve. Then arrival of new consumers, right? If my price is falling, there'll be certain customers who were not able to afford this product earlier, but now since the price has fallen, they can afford it. So there'll be arrival of new customers, because of which, again, since the price is falling, quantity demand is increasing, right? So this can also be the reason. Coming to next, different uses of good, right? All right. Then different uses of the good. There can be multiple uses of the good. If there are multiple uses, if the price falls, I will start using that good for more and more uses. If I'm starting to use it for more and more uses, I will demand it more, right? Example, what? Olive oil, internet, wood or coal. These were the examples that we saw, correct? Now come to your next class, class 10. And as you might have seen from the test, what is the most important topic? Obviously, elasticity of demand. Then we saw exceptions to law of demand, which is, first one is what? Veblen or conspicuous goods. What are these goods? These are your prestigious goods. As the price is rising, I told you that the consumer will think, oh, I'm getting more prestige out of these goods, so he'll demand more. These are also called conspicuous goods, right? Then conspicuous necessities. These are actually not your necessities, but what is happening? Because of your usage or because of the society norms, you are making it your necessity or it is becoming your habit. Because of that, again, if the prices are even rising, you will demand those goods, or it'll your demand will not fall even if the prices are rising. Then necessaries. This was easy. Obviously, you have to purchase them. Without that, you cannot live. So you will obviously not decrease your demand even if the prices are increasing. Then Giffen goods. What was Giffen goods? This is a paradox, or this is a situation. What was the situation? That in some cases there's an inferior good, and this inferior goods prices are rising, right? If the prices are rising, then there'll be decline in the purchasing power of the persons, and the other goods which he was purchasing, because of this decline in purchasing power, the other expensive products that he was purchasing, he will cut down on those expensive products also and he'll start purchasing this. Why? Because in spite of an increase in the prices of this product, it's still below those other expensive products, right? What was the example? Bread was there and the other products was meat, right? So this meat is still expensive after even the prices of the bread increased, right? Akansha, if you have a doubt, just type in the chat box. I'll complete the doubts after I revise the complete thing, right? Then future expectations of the consumer. What are these? When prices are rising, consumers expect, oh, it will still rise more. So what will they do? They will purchase more and more because the prices are rising. Could you mute yourself? There's someone who's Akansha. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So when the prices are rising, obviously consumers, now some consumers will do what? They expect, oh, price अब और बढ़ेगा. अभी बढ़ा, but they're expecting, oh, अभी और बढ़ेगा. So what will they do? Will they decrease their consumption? No. They will think, let's buy it today so that we save for future also. So even if the prices are rising, what are they doing? They're purchasing more and more now, right? Rather than reducing their consumption. So this can also happen. In case of floods and droughts, this is a very normal thing to happen. Then irrational consumer, who is he? Who is not rational, who does not take informed decisions. He does not have the entire information or the entire knowledge about the products, correct? Speculative market, like your stock market. Again, here also it depends on your future expectations, that if you are expecting that the price will rise more, you will purchase more. All right, coming to expansion or contraction. Again, there were questions on this topic also. So there was a student who asked me as to, she's getting confused in this topic. So I'll take this topic a little bit slow. So what is expansion or contraction of demand? This is nothing but my change in quantity demanded because of change in price. What am I changing? What factor am I changing? I'm changing price. So the student had a doubt as to when contraction is happening and when expansion is happening, right? So the basic thing is, if you're getting confused as to what is expansion and what is contraction, draw the graph. If you draw the graph on the paper, if you're seeing a question paper, draw the graph on that question paper also. In the actual exam is what I'm saying. So draw the graph. If you draw the graph, if you draw a line, a downward sloping line, and put one price line. Here in the example, we took PQ, right? Now increase the price. You only increase the price in that graph. If you increase the price, what is happening to quantity? It's shifting to the left, correct? Increase in price is shifting my quantity to the left. Why? Because obviously law of demand is working here. Increase in price will reduce my quantity demanded. So it's shifting to the left. Increase in price is contracting my demand. Why? What is contraction? Contraction is lessen. So what is happening when price is increasing, my quantity demanded is decreasing, right? So contraction is happening when the prices are rising. So an upward movement on the demand curve is contraction. I guess she was getting confused in this, that an upward movement is contraction and a downward movement is expansion, correct? What is downward movement? When you're reducing the price, what is happening on the graph? You're moving down. If you're moving down, obviously the quantity demanded will increase, correct? I hope you're getting the picture. When you're imagining the graph, then only you'll get these things. So what you'll have to do in the exam, you draw the graph, you give both the scenarios, when it is increasing, when the price is increasing and the price is decreasing. That is when you'll understand as to when upward movement is happening and when downward movement is happening. All right. Then moving to increase or decrease in demand, not quantity demanded, but demand and change in demand. What is happening here? Here, the curve itself is shifting. The demand curve itself is shifting. Why? Because the price is remaining constant. If I keep the price constant and if I want to increase the demand, can I do it without shifting the demand curve? You draw a graph and tell me a possibility, and you've drawn a demand line. You have included one PL, again PQ. So that PQ, if the price is remaining constant and you want to increase the demand, can you do it with the same line? Obviously no, right? If the price is remaining same, you will have to shift to another point. You'll have to shift to another curve. So if the demand is rising because of other factors, you will shift towards right. Why? Because quantity demanded then will increase. If your quantity demanded is decreasing because of other factors other than price, then what will happen? Then quantity demanded will shift to the left, correct? Because if you join the dots down, then what will happen? The quantity demanded will go to the left, correct? So increase is right, decrease is left. Upar kya tha? Expansion is downwards, contraction is upwards. All right. So I hope this is clear now. Then elasticity of demand. What was elasticity? It's nothing but the responsiveness of demand to a change in one of the variable. We saw, and this can be price, income, or your cross elasticity. First one, which was price, is what? Price elasticity is responsiveness of quantity demanded to change in price. What is the formula? Percentage change in quantity demanded by percentage change in price, right? Then we saw the example and we told that negative values should not be taken. This also there was a doubt, but I'll clear that doubt afterwards because there are students who have not written the test. So once we're starting those doubts, we can ask them to leave. Then we moved on to types of price elasticity. Perfectly elastic, relatively elastic, unitary elastic, relatively inelastic, perfectly inelastic. Correct? There were 5 types. What is perfectly elastic? This is when your response is great. Your response of demand is high. You're changing the price by a meager sum, but the response of the demand is very great. So in this case also, what will happen? Your quantity demanded, your elasticity of quantity demanded will be infinite, correct? And the curve will be what? Curve will be a horizontal curve, which is opposite to your x-axis. Then relatively elastic demand, or more than unitary elastic demand, right? Why? Because the elasticity is greater than 1. Here what is happening? A small change in price is bringing a great change in demand, right? Your demand is responding more. The percentage change in quantity demanded is more than percentage change in price, correct? Okay. Then we saw unitary elastic, where percentage change in price is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded. If price is changing by 5%, quantity demanded is also changing by 5%. Then relatively inelastic demand, where what was happening? Here the demand response is less than the rest change in price. So the percentage change in quantity demanded is less than percentage change in price. Correct? So here the curve will be more steep. In relatively elastic, it was not the steep. Here see the curve, it is more steep. That is when you will, if you draw the diagram, you would get that theory that a major change in price is affecting quantity demanded by not very much but very little, correct? And then perfectly inelastic, where the demand curve itself is opposite to y-axis, or it is vertical. So you change your price, you do anything, the demand will not change. The demand is the same, correct? Then we saw methods of different methods to measure elasticity. One is percentage, which we covered earlier. The other are point, total outlay, and arc. What is point? Point is when you're measuring it on one of the curves. Here, the important point is what? That at midpoint it is equal to 1. When it touches the x-axis, it is 0. On other side, it is infinite. So it is increasing while it is moving upwards, right? And when can this be used? It can be used when the change is very small and it is touching the both axes. So both the conditions should be satisfied. Then total outlay method, where total expenditure really, you are analyzing the elasticity by what? By analyzing as to how much are you spending on that particular item. This I'm not discussing because it's very easy. So if you have some specific doubt in this, you can ask. Arc elasticity is when I'm given two prices and two quantities, but I don't know what is new one and what is old one. That is when I'll use the arc elasticity formula, correct, which I'm considering with average prices and average quantities. Then there were factors which affect my elasticity. The first one is availability of substitutes. More substitutes available, more will be the elasticity. Less substitutes are available, less will be the elasticity, correct? Position of commodity in consumer's budget. If the proportion that I'm spending on that particular good is high, then it will be elastic, right? But if it is very low, the proportion out of my expenditure, if it is very low, then obviously it will be inelastic. What were the examples that we took? Buttons and matchsticks, which occupy a very low percentage of your income or low percentage of your budget, correct? Let's move on to the next class. Class 12. Availability of substitutes we covered, and nature of the need that the commodity satisfies, correct? Depending on whether it is comfort, luxury, or a necessity. If it is a comfort or a luxury, it will be relatively elastic, but if it is a necessity, it will be inelastic, right? As we saw, law of demand doesn't work here. So if the prices are changing, the demand is not getting affected. That means it is inelastic, correct? But exception can be a very rich person. He will not get mattered by a few changes in price. He will buy comforts and luxuries also if the price is changing. But normally, if the question is not giving you any information about the consumer, which mostly they won't, normally comforts and luxuries are what they will have an elastic demand. Why? Because we are considering that every consumer is rational. So if every consumer is rational, he will give importance to prices, right? Then time period available. If there's greater time available for me to consume that product, the elasticity will be more. But if I don't have the time only, I have to consume it immediately. If the time period which with me is not much, then obviously it'll have inelastic demand, right? If I cannot postpone the consumption, then it'll have an inelastic demand. Number of users. If there are more number of users, elasticity will be more. If there are less number of users, it will be relatively inelastic, right? And whenever these words are written, no, like in fifth point we wrote elastic and inelastic. This doesn't mean perfectly inelastic and perfectly elastic. This means relatively, right? Then consumer habits. If you're habituated with one particular product, then even if the price is changing, your demand won't get affected. So it is inelastic. Then tight demand. What are tight demand? Demand for such goods are only within another good. They cannot be consumed separately, like ink cartridges and printers. So ink cartridge, can you do anything with that ink cartridge? No, you will have to use it with a printer in order to do something with it. So the demand of that good is entirely dependent on another good, right? If it is entirely dependent on other good, it is called a tight demand. So students had a doubt as to whether all complementary goods are tight. No, all tight demand goods are complementary goods, but all complementary are not necessarily tight. Why? Because let's take the example of tea and sugar. So in this case, sugar has its independent utility also, right? It can be used without tea also. Is it necessary that you have to use sugar only with tea? No, tea and sugar are complementary, but sugar is not tied with tea. But here in this case, printers and ink cartridges are complementary, but ink cartridges demand is completely tied with printers, right? So tight demand goods are complementary, but all complementary are not necessarily tied. All right. Then price range. If it is very high price range, inelastic, because it will be purchased by most of the rich persons who are not bothered about a price change. Low price range, inelastic, because they'll be either necessities or they are forming very low proportion of your income. You won't get mattered. Only in the mid price ranges when you will be elastic. Income elasticity, it was easy. Types of income elasticity: positive, zero, and negative, right? When can I call a positive relationship in income elasticity? When quantity demanded is increasing with an increase in income. When it will be zero, when it is not changing with the change in income, quantity demanded is not changing. When will it be negative? When quantity demanded is increasing with the decrease in income, or with the increase in income, quantity demanded is decreasing. So with what goods will negative elasticity happen? With your inferior goods. With what goods positive will happen? With your normal and luxury goods. Within normal and luxury goods, what will react more? Luxury goods will have greater elasticity than normal goods. If you want to write down that point, you can write down that luxury goods will have a greater elasticity than normal goods, greater income elasticity. So here when we wrote, there was one point where we wrote about positive, right? Here. So here in the brackets, you can write that luxury goods have a greater elasticity than normal goods. Why? Because luxury goods price is high. So it is forming greater part of your income. So if it is forming greater part of your income, so it will react more to the change in income, right? All right. Then cross elasticity of demand. What was cross? Cross is if I'm changing the price of another good, of a substitute or a complementary, how is this good reacting? How is this good's quantity demanded reacting? That is nothing but cross elasticity. In case of substitute products, the cross elasticity will be what? It will be upward sloping. Sorry, the demand curve will be upward sloping. So upward sloping demand curve. Why? Because price, as the price of substitute increases, quantity demanded also increases. So the cross elasticity will be what? It will be positive, right? Numerator is also increasing, denominator is also increasing. So it will be positive. Complementary products में क्या होगा? Here quantity demanded is increasing when the prices are decreasing. So there's an inverse relationship in complementary goods. That is why the demand curve is sloping downwards. Also, the cross elasticity will be negative, right? Why? Because in the formula, numerator and denominator, one is increasing, the other is decreasing. So there'll be a negative sign which will come. Then advertisement elasticity, which was easy. I'm not discussing that. How is your quantity demanded reacting to the changes in your advertisement expenditure? Then we moved on to demand forecasting. What was this? This was the art and science of knowing or predicting your probable demand as to what will be the demand in future, correct? Scope and usefulness is easy. Types of demand forecasting. So on the basis of scale, what can be the demand forecasting? It can either be macro, industry level, or firm level forecasting, right? What is macro level forecasting? This is the forecasting done for the whole economy, right? Aggregates of all when you're considering that level of forecasting. What will be the national's demand? What will be the demand for the whole nation? That is macro level. What is industry and firm? A group of firms is called an industry, right? A group of firms which are producing biscuits will be a biscuit industry. So if you're analyzing demand for the all firms put together, that will be industry level forecasting. But if you're analyzing only one firm at one time, then that will be what? Firm level forecasting. Then on the basis of time period, it can either be short term demand forecasting or a long term demand forecasting. What are short term used for? Short term are used for short term decision making or tactical decisions. Long term is used for strategic decisions, which are long term decisions, correct? Demand distinctions I'm not discussing, it's very, very easy. Then methods. Come to the methods, we'll see each method quickly. All right. First one was what? Survey of buyer's intention. What were you doing in this? You were going to your customers and you were taking a survey as to what would they purchase in near future, right? This can be done only for short term. Why? Because the consumers, they'll be not very sure of long term plans. They cannot tell you after 2 years what will they consume. But if you ask them in next 5 months what will you consume, that'll be easier for them to say. So this can be used only for short term. There can be three types of survey. One is complete enumeration, where you're using every consumer. Next is sample, where you're taking out certain consumers as a sample and then you are doing the survey on them. And then you're generalizing that for the whole group. Whatever that particular small group says, you will generalize that thing for the whole group. Third is input output method. What is this? You will see as to where are these goods being used. You're producing something. Where are these being used? And then you will calculate as to how many units will they require for producing it, right? If you know how many units will they require, that will be the demand, right? So you will have to know what will be their expected output to get your input, correct? The next one was collective opinion or salesforce opinion or grassroots approach. What is this? You're not going to the consumers, but you're going to a person who's closely related to consumers, who's very close to the consumer. Who? Your salesman, right? Your salesman will be very close to your consumer. So you'll go to your salesman and you are asking him, or you're inquiring him, or you're taking a survey of your salesman. You're taking the opinion of the salesman as to what will the consume, what do you think the consumers will consume in future, correct? There's a procedure where you, what do? You remove the optimism and pessimism. You take in the other factors which the salesman would not have taken into picture, like the changes in prices or advertisement strategies, right? This is again for short term. Then expert opinion method. What is this? You're going to professional experts. You're going to professional market experts who've been doing this work for a long time, right? They've been giving people studies and they've been studying the market, and they've been telling people that this goods demand will be high or this goods demand will be low. You're going to them and you're asking as to, in my condition or in my case, what will be the demand? This again can be done in two methods. One is what? Panel consensus, where you're calling everybody to one place and having a meeting, right? Like a conference room. In the conference room, everybody can put across their point. The meeting will end when everybody is in consensus, when everybody agrees to one point. That conclusion, whatever conclusion is being drawn, everybody should be in consensus. That is when the meeting ends. That conclusion is nothing but your answer, correct? Then there's an approach called Delphi approach. This was propounded by Olaf Hamler, who's from Rand Corporation, USA. So what is this method? This method is, you're not calling every expert to a particular conference room, but you're sending them questionnaires separately. Now, if you're sending questionnaires separately, what is happening? They are not affected by other individuals' perceptions, right? They're not affected by what others people think. They're thinking individually first and giving you answers, right? But in conference room, what will happen? You will immediately get affected by other people's responses. Here, everybody is answering individually. You're getting that questionnaire back to you. An independent authority will analyze that and send back responses to them saying that other people have said this, you have said this, what do you think about this thing? So if he wants to change his option, he can change his thing, and then when everybody is in consensus, that is when this procedure will end. If they're not in consensus, again we'll send them back to questionnaire, again they'll reply, again we'll send questionnaire back, again they'll reply. So that will be the procedure which will go on until and unless they come to a consensus, right? All right. Then statistical methods. The first statistical method which we saw is trend projection method or classical method. What was happening in this? In this, you have past historical data. You have in year 2000, how much did you sell? 2001, how much did you sell? 2002, how much did you sell? Basis that you're applying that particular trend to your next year also, assuming that all the factors will remain the same, correct? So if it is increasing every year by 5%, you will assume that demand will increase next year also by 5%. Then these technique can also have two other techniques. Out of trend projection method, you can derive other two methods. What is the first method out of that? Your freehand projection or your graphical method. What are you doing? In this, you have historical data again, but there is a lot of historical data, and if you are plotting them, they're very abruptly given on the graph. So it's not the case that you can clearly draw, all the bar graphs. In the first graph, what was happening? You drew a bar graph, and you can easily see, it's increasing by 5% every time. Next year also it will increase by 5%. But here, what is happening? Here it's not every time increasing, it's increasing, decreasing, and again increasing, right? So what will you assume in this case? Wherever the curve is moving in the last, you will assume that it is moving there. So if it is moving upwards, you will assume it is moving upwards in the next year also. If it is moving downwards, you will assume that it will move down for the next year also, right? Then fitting trend equation or least square method. If you see this method and you read it from your ICI material also, you'll not understand anything. Why? Because this method is like that. It's very complicated as such. But what we have to do, you understand how much I've told you. If you've understood how much you have told you, that is enough. You don't have to go into complications and complicate it more. That agar ye value डालेंगे तो ऐसा होगा, वो value डालेंगे तो ऐसा होगा. You don't have to complicate it more because this is very deeply in maths. This is not about economics. You will have to go into maths and see things. So what is happening in this? In this, there are a lot of scattered points. All right, you have plotted your points, but there are a lot of scattered points in which you cannot draw a graph and analyze things. All right, you will not be in a position to draw a freehand curve. So what do? You draw or fit a line into those dots. All right, what are you doing? You're trying to fit a line. That means you're trying to put a line in those dots. But how should that line be? That line be in such a way that other points which are not there on that line should not be very far away from the points on the line. All right, other points which are not there on the line, which are also called calculated values, those calculated values should not be very far away from your points on the line. Points on the line are called observed values. So your calculated value and the observed value should not be very far away from each other. So how will you do it? You will have to draw a line which is probably moving through the midpoint of the section. So whatever is your section of the scattered points, if you draw a line which is moving through the midpoint of it, not exactly but approximately, you will get a value which is very not far away from the other points, right? If you draw in the first graph where you're drawing a line where you're drawing at the extreme, then the point which is at the other extreme end, that will be very far away from the point on the line, right, which is on the other extreme end. But if you draw in between, then all the points are not very far away from the points on the line, correct? But this method cannot be used when there are trends or when there are cyclical sharp turns in your business cycles. That means it is not considered when your graph or when your trends of the past years is moving in a cyclical manner, right? Let's move on to the next class where I guess we have ended this particular unit. All right, so statistical method, first one was trend projection, which had graphical and least square method also. Then is your regression analysis. What is this? This is nothing but you are trying to get a line equation. excuse me, you're trying to get a linear equation. So what is a linear equation? A line's equation can be expressed in the form of y is equals to mx plus c. Again, maths. This, if you use in economics, you can get a equation of your quantity demanded, which is an dependent variable, and your factors of demand, which are independent variable. All right, where y is equals to a plus bx. So y is x here x here is independent and y is dependent. Now why is y dependent? Because y is depending on the value of x. So if the x value changes, y value will also change. X value jaise jaise change hoga, y value will also change. So y here is a dependent variable, which is what your quantity demanded. X value is independent, which is your factor of demand. What are A and B? These are constants, which you will have to find. If you get these constants, then if you substitute x in that, you will get the y value, correct? We saw an example also where we tried to find first A and B's value, and then we substitute x value in that equation. Then controlled experiment or market experiment. What was happening in this? You're taking a market in controlled conditions and you're trying to change the factors of demand, and you're analyzing as to what will that change or how will that change affect my demand, right? And this thing you will apply in your future, that in future if I change my factor, how will my demand response, correct? But this has disadvantages like time consuming and it is costly, and you will not know as to what factors should I change, what factors should I keep constant. So there's an alternative to that, which is controlled laboratory experiments or consumer clinics. What are these? You'll give consumers a little bit of pesa, you'll give a little bit of money. What will they do? They'll have to go to a store which you are only preparing. That store also you will only prepare. You will see what goods are the consumers buying with that limited income, correct? With that limited money that you have given them, what goods are they buying? Depending on that, you can analyze and generalize. कि ठीक है, 5 consumers have bought this, 10 consumers have bought this, so this is more preferred, this particular good is more preferred, correct? Then barometric method of forecasting. What is this? This is nothing but it is taking into account your business cycles also, which is your chapter 5. Your expansion, peak, recession, and trough, these are different business cycles. It will take into account this also while calculating or forecasting demand. Now, what are the economic indicators? One is leading, the other is lagging, third is coincidental. What is leading? It is telling me in advance. Lagging, it will tell me after thing has happened. Coincidental, it is telling me simultaneously, right? Then non-durable goods, what are the factors which affect them? Price of the good, price of related good, income and demographics or characteristics of population. These are all coming from your factors affecting demand, right? Then factors affecting demand for durable good, which you can use more than once. For these, first one is long time use or replacement decision. What is the psychology of the consumer? When does he want to change his TV? When does he want to replace it? For how long will he use it? That will also determine demand. There are certain goods which will require special facilities. Those special facilities availability and their growth will also determine your demand. Then joint use by households. If a particular good is being used by more than one person, then that also particular, those persons who are, everybody who's using that good, everybody jointly will have to take a decision, right? So everybody's perception and the size of the family and the age groups of the people will also determine your demand. Then your price of good and credit facility available. This is again coming from your factor affecting demand. All right, so we finished with this. So if you have any doubts which is relating to your chapter, you can write it now. Then we can move to our test. Substitution effect. All right. So what was substitution effect? Substitution effect was one of the reasons for why your demand curve is downward sloping, correct? So reason for downward sloping demand curve means what? That means if the price is increasing, quantity demanded is decreasing. I want to give a reason to this, right? What can be the reason that I can give? One of the reason is substitution effect. What is happening here? Here, if the price of the good is increasing, let's say I am a tea seller, I'm a tea manufacturer, not a tea seller. So if I'm manufacturing tea And if the let's say the prices of tea are increasing and I'm manufacturing tea, what will happen? There's a substitute available, so people will go and consume that substitute good. So if prices are increasing, substitution effect is happening, and people are substituting tea for coffee. Now they are consuming coffee and not tea. So what is happening to my demand? It's obviously going down. So price increase is affecting my demand and decreasing the demand. So obviously, what is this? This is law of demand. So this can be one of the reasons for law of demand, that my price is increasing, quantity demanded is decreasing. Why? Because a substitution is available. Similarly, if the prices are falling, what will happen? People who are consuming that substitute good is coming to me now. My quantity demand is rising, so price falling, quantity demand rising. Again, a reason for downward sloping demand curve. All right. Marginal utility of money. That is our next chapter, Naman. It's not related to this chapter, right? All right. No other doubt relating to this. So people who have joined only for revision can leave now so that we can discuss the paper. So any doubts relating to paper, you can just tell me.